Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. As you can see, we are in my car, and it is dark outside, which means it must be Wednesday night, which means it must be time to be talking some AHS. And as you can see, that was an interesting blue light. I tell you, what an appropriate time to be watching American Horror Story and talking about American Horror Story. Because we're having this like crazy storm on the East Coast. I'm outside right now. There's like 30 plus mile an hour winds gusting. My car is blowing all over the place. There was a blue, you saw that blue flash, right? I think a transformer must have just blown, which means, yeah, I bet you those are transformers. There it goes again. Those are transformers blowing, which means we're probably going to end up losing power on our street, maybe. But somebody's losing power, man. So you got blue flashes going on, hardcore rain, things shaking. What a perfect night to be talking about the end of our first night of American Horror Story. So why don't you pull up a chair, man, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in, spoiler-free, then spoiler-filled, into American Horror Story 1984, Episode 5, titled Red Dawn. That's right. Once the main cast got to the camp at the end of episode 1, middle of episode 1, somewhere in there. Jeez, man, maybe that's lightning. I don't know. Things are lighting up. I'm getting distracted, man. I'm freaking out. From the time they got to the camp to now, this has all been one night. And that's essentially the premise of the whole episode. And while it's not a terrible premise, right? I think we all want to get to dawn and see if kids are actually coming. Is this a real camp? Are we trending toward Roanoke again? Like, what's going on with this episode? The way we kind of approach it in this one ends up making the episode feel like one of those horror movies where you keep too many main characters around. You find yourself smack dab in the middle of the third act going, oh, crud, we gotta start thinning this out really quick. And all of a sudden, all these things happen, but it doesn't really feel satisfying or like a lot happen because you're just speeding to get to the end so you can set up the next movie or get ready to tell the next part of the story, which is the case here. And, you're just kind of flying through it, whereas like the episode started with kind of a nice build. We get some background on Donna and more things about her character that set up some really, really interesting plot points for her and see where she ends up as a chess piece on this giant board of 1984 and maybe swing to a different kind of villain. And I like that stuff, man. It was a good setup. And you're like, oh, man, like that's okay. I didn't see that coming. And they kind of fool you a couple times with that opening. And then there are some other nice moments between some of our characters, and some weird moments, and then some moments where it's like people are just throwing down. And once we kind of get into that throwdown stage, things start moving really, really quick. And it just didn't feel like it was accomplishing very much other than it's like, well, we're going to fill this last 30 minutes with doing all the things we have to do to get us to Dave time. And then the end of the episode ends up being something I kind of like as the daytime part. One just offers one of my favorite scenes maybe this year and maybe in American Horror Story all time. It's absolutely hysterical and messed up, which is the way it should be in a horror TV show. And it does set up some interesting premises of like maybe where could we go while leaving other premises kind of ambiguous on whether or not we're going to follow them. So for me, episode 5, Red Dawn, again, it's an episode where I think this title makes sense for what's going on. But, it's sort of like a setup episode, but a wrap-up episode at the same time. And, it's kind of like those movies that like, oh, well, we made this movie so we could tell you the second story. And you get kind of that type of vibe in the episode in certain places. But, for me, I'm a sucker for this show, and I'm a sucker for 80s slasher flicks. And they continue to do things, including having maybe this is purposeful. And we were having this bad episode where a lot of things happen because we've seen that in horror films. But that's why you have me, man. A hook, line, and sinker. I'm always here for American Horror Story. Even if it's like an okay episode, I still try to find a way to get myself psyched. And like I said, this episode wasn't all bad. I mean, I did have some reactions, but I would recommend, if you haven't seen the episode, you should exit now, man. Like, exit stage left. Although I guess for you guys looking at it, it looks like stage right. But It's my left, I promise you. Exit stage left. If you haven't seen the episode and you don't want me to spoil anything or be spoiled by my reactions, you gotta get out of here right now, man. I'll give you 5, I'll give you 4, I'll give you 3, I'll give you 2, I'll give you 1. Get on out. Let's hit it to the past C-Man from before and check out how I was reacting as these kills were coming and going. Oh, she's alive. Oh, man. Oh. Paddle to the dome. Still fighting your feet shut. Oh, God. Oh. She's going for the ear. Go, Savior. You actually get him? Oh, what a great celebration dance.
Never better, actually.
No, not Xavier. Oh. Spurt guy. Oh. Oh, man. Oh, no.
There was no body next to it. Found it in the refrigerator.
Oh, it's right his head.
By the insurance, that body.
It's not gonna have any vital signs.
I just want to go home, please.
It's got no pulse. Yep, no vital signs. Oh, it's so weird. What would you do if you were an EMT?
Let's get him to the hospital.
Oh, they just left the camp. Yep. Murder house style. So, as you can see, some of those, okay, but most of them kind of lukewarm in the reaction zone because you kind of start to see some of these things taking place. But like I said, it's not an all bad episode, just kind of one of the weaker ones for me. And now it's spoiler time. So let's dive into everything that was happening and figure out maybe why some stuff was working or wasn't working or what was happening or who died, man. Everybody dies pretty much in this episode. It's crazy, but once again, we start with a flashback. We go to 1980 to learn some more stuff about Donna. And we start to find out that there might be some, more things going on with her that could be pushing her toward, like, hardcore villain state, even more so than what she already is, because of this piece of the story. And these are the things this season that I've really enjoyed. Every time we kind of go to one of these flashbacks, this one flashing back 4 years prior to 1980, because it gives you the opportunity to get to know these characters, feel a little bit more intimate with them, and this, real intimate. Like, you start out, Donna's in a car, and she's watching a guy walk around a car, open a door, and take another woman out of the car, and he goes upstairs, and she goes, I knew it, and you're like, oh, man, that must be her husband, like he's cheating on her. But then, like for a quick second right before we get into the apartment, you notice Donna kind of say something that makes you go, oh, this is like a family member. And first, I thought it was her brother. But then after she's inside and she sees, like, the gutted woman, and then the woman, like, wakes up and kind of scares her, she, like, starts to go into, like, doctor mode, sort of, and be like, we gotta stop the bleeding. This woman's going to die. Her entrails are hanging out of her stomach, man. Like, she's not gonna make it. And once she does die, the guy shows up, and he's a lot older, and I'm like, oh, wait, maybe this is a dad situation. And then, clearly, whatever, I don't always have the best hearing, so when I think she was talking about the family, she might have been referencing the fact that her mom, it had something to do with her mom and her dad, not her brother. But what you find out is that, the dad's just been disappearing, he's not coming home on time, he's out late at night, and, Donna, who goes by Dee Dee back in 1980, is thinking that he's cheating, so she follows him, and doesn't end up confirming it. Instead, finds something so much more disturbing. And then what he says kind of reminded me of Dexter, where he's like, look, I've been doing this my whole life. Like, I was born with this darkness inside of me, and I have to satiate it, man. I gotta feed it. And the only way to do that is by doing this. So, like, I've been killing people my whole life. Like, I've been this my whole life. And the way he kind of described his darkness kind of made me think of Dexter and, like, you know, his dark passenger that kind of follows him around and forces him to be a killer. And it's one of these things where Dee Dee starts to have a breakdown. Like, no, you're the man that raised me. You're my dad. I love you. Like, no, this isn't right. Like, and he's like, no, like, it is. I am this. And she kind of is like, well, I'm a psychologist, Dad. Like, we can figure it out. And you kind of find out right there that this was the moment that she ends up deciding, trying to work with serial killers to try to figure out if her dad was savable, if she could have done something, or if this actually was who he was all the time, that he wasn't the man that she loved. And before, you know, as you're starting to kind of digest, like, oh, okay, that's where this is coming from, the next thing you know, he's like, you know, and she's pleading with him. He's like, you know, you almost had me. And he takes out the knife, and you're like, oh, shoot, well, he's obviously not going to kill Dee Dee because she's in 1984. And right to the side of his own neck, man. Like, again, another one that kind of got me. You saw in those reactions, like, whoa, man, like, you knew it was coming, but not in that violent way. And from that moment forward, that's where she dropped Dee Dee. And we come back to present day, and she's, you know, where we left her last week was watching the Night Stalker be risen by Satan. And they're kind of having a conversation. She's like, I don't understand. How can this be? Like, you know, he explains the whole thing. And then he tells her that her name is Dee Dee. And she goes, how do you know that? No one's called me that. And he's like, since that night. He's like, because Satan's told me. And the darkness is inside you, man. Like, almost kind of like trying to recruit her. And she's like, no. And goes to run. And he just kind of is like, is what it is, and leaves. And then her dad shows up as a ghost and basically tells her, like, no, the darkness is inside you. You can't hide from it. And it's one of those things where it's like I said, like, this opening was kind of interesting and lays some threads for Donna where it's like, oh, man, like, she could be becoming serial killer number 3. Like, this is maybe something that she's going to have to carry on now that she's seen all the things that she's seen. And we were off to what I thought was kind of an interesting start. But then we have to, you know, jump into pushing the story forward. So we go back to the car, which is on fire, and Xavier just starts talking crazy. And it's fair, man. I mean, my man's face is melting, skin's falling off of the bones, and he's in a bad way, but he's basically like, this, we have to burn all of this down, man. Like, we gotta burn. And they're like, we're not doing that, Xavier. Like, calm down. Runs, grabs a branch. For a hot second, I was like, is he gonna just, like, toss himself into the fire? Because he was saying some crazy stuff, man. Like, you've been in the fire of 1,000 suns, referring to the oven. But, like, starts talking crazy, lights a branch on fire, and is, like, about to go, and Margaret knocks him upside the head, knocks him out, and is like, somebody had to do it. Like, he was gonna do something crazy and, like, hurt himself or somebody else. And then we move inside to a cabin, and you have, you know, it's Margaret and Chet and Montana and Brooke and unconscious Xavier in the bed. And, you know, they're kind of starting to come up with, like, what can we do? And Margaret, you know, talks about how, like, oh, on the other side of the island, like, where the water is, if we go to the other side, like, there's stuff that we can use to help us get out of here. So, you know, Margaret and Chet head off, and that basically leaves us with Brooke and Montana, because Xavier's passed out on the bed from being knocked upside the head with a gun butt from Margaret. And like I said, Montana's always trying to get her alone, and sure enough, grabs, like, a hatchet, and you're like, all right, man, she's gonna kill her finally. Like, okay. And no, she can't. And again, it's one of those frustrating things where you're like, come on! Like, you gotta just do it. You have a hatchet. Hit the girl. And right as she's about to, Brooke is, like, kind of, you know, giving you some exposition, and then goes, oh my God, did you see that? And that throws Montana off enough to stop what she's doing, go, see what? And she's like, Ray. And she's like, Ray? And he's like, yeah, he said he was going to go help. Maybe he did. And she goes to just, she's like, boom, I'm going to bolt out of here. And turns and sees Montana with the hatchet. This is actually kind of funny. And it's like, yeah, keep that. And she runs off, and Montana gets all kind of frustrated. You're just like, girl, you just got to, like, kill this chick. But instead, she lets her get away, and she goes running, and sure enough, it is Ray. And the minute we see Ray as Ray interacting with another person, I went, woo, we are not dealing with time travel, folks. We are dealing with a murder house situation, I think. And fortunately, something happens that can confirm whether or not it is a murder house situation. But the minute you see Ray, you're just like, nah, man. That guy got his head decapitated. There ain't no time traveling with that. Like, he must be a ghost. And what's crazy is he doesn't realize, he's very confused, much like the hippie. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like, I was like running, and then I was here, and I don't really know what's going on. So this is one of these nice moments we get before all mayhem breaks loose, where Ray and Brooke kind of start talking, and Brooke kind of gives you some more backstory on her as you find out that, like, she was always someone who had to be number one. She was the definition of a nerd, like bookworm style. Like, always got A's, and there was this boy in the class who always came in second, and it happened so often that he stopped talking to her and got, like, the grade to stop talking to her. So she decides to start purposely failing or losing or getting questions wrong or missing things, so that he doesn't feel so bad. So Brooke, literally, I think at this point it's easy to confirm that Brooke is the pure innocent character that not all of us were suspecting that we would get from Emma Roberts. And what you come to find out is that after he becomes number one, he asks her out, and she falls in love. And then she's like, when he asked me to marry him, I said yes. And you're like, the fiance and her go, like, all the way back to childhood. And you're just like, oh, that's kind of crazy. And then, like, Ray kind of gives you, he's like, I kind of get that. Like, I was a doctor, kind of pushed myself to go to, like, all the best schools, make sure I got into the best fraternities, and that kind of led me to where I am, which ain't too great. Because, of course, we know that he basically killed a guy that he thought was dead, but wasn't dead. He was going to pose, and send off the frat brother off the like, he committed suicide. But just in that moment, like, as he's talking, all of a sudden, like, they're just kind of talking about life, and, and Brooke just kind of looks at him and goes for it and gives him a kiss, and you're like, I know at this point, like, he's a ghost, and you're just like, oh man, this is so Tessa Farmiga. Like, if Tessa Farmiga was here, she would be playing this role, because, like, this is what happened to her at Murder House. And now I'm like, we got ghosts. I'm like, they are lining up a lot of Murder House things if these are indeed ghosts and they can't leave the property. And now all the things are starting to go in the brain. And the next thing you know, he's like, why did you do that? And she goes, because I wanted to. I just did it to do, because I could. Like, I feel like I've been alive all this time. I haven't lived anything. And, and Ray's like, all right, then let's do it. And they start to go at it, and you're like, oh no, like, little innocent Brooke might be next to, like, get off, because we all know the rules of slasher flicks, man. Like, you never say you'll be right back, and if you're the virgin, stay a virgin if you want to live all the way to the end. And, from there, obviously, we don't see anything. They cut back to the cabin where Montana is, and Xavier has woken up, and they're kind of starting to talk, and Donna comes running in full speed, kind of all spooked and whatnot, after, having that encounter with her dad and the Night Stalker. And, like, she starts kind of just racing and mumbling, and then the next thing you know, she's admitting everything to the two of them in the room. And the minute she says that, like, she was responsible for letting Jingles get out, Xavier is like, you did this to my face. This is why I'm a monster. This is why I'll never be on TV Guide. And he goes for the kill blow, like, trying to kill her. Montana kind of jumps out of the way, and Donna dashes across one way, and he misses again, and Donna, boom, bolts out the door. Xavier goes running and following, and you're left with Montana again, all by herself in the cabin, essentially. And before we can find out what happens there, we jump back to where Brooke and Ray are, and we find out that, like, Ray was like, that was pretty amazing. She's like, yeah, it was. I guess. I don't know. I don't really have anything to reference it to. And Ray's like, huh? She's like, I've never done it before. And he's like, you had a fiance. And she's like, we were waiting until after marriage or whatever. And you find out that she's a virgin. And now I'm like, for sure, Brooke is going to die. Because she now you blew the virginity card. Like, no sex had ever happened with the long-term boyfriend. Boom. Like, Brooke is going to be in a lot of trouble. But also at the same time, like, this is screwed up. Like, what is happening with the Ray situation? And, she gets up. He goes, so how did it make you feel? She's like, thirsty. She gets up and goes to the kitchen because they're kind of in, like, one of the mess halls. And she goes to open the fridge and starts screaming. And Ray comes in, and you can see that there's a head in there. And it's Ray's head. And Brooke starts to put together that he is a ghost. And now at that point, I'm like, okay, now we're confirmed. It's a ghost. at some point he's going to try to leave and he's going to come right back. This is so murder housing right now. And, she bolts out and Ray's just kind of left there like contemplating his own life because he didn't realize that he was dead. And then, we cut back to Montana as Brooke comes running in full speed and she's like, oh my God, like, she's panicking. She's like, is everybody dead here? Am I losing my mind? What is going on? And again, gets in the situation where her back is to Montana. You're like, Montana's finally gonna get her. And Brooke turns back around before she can hit her. And Montana kind of makes a quick comment and makes Brooke go, what? And she hits her. I'm like, oh, she got her finally. But there was no blood splatter, no anything. I'm like, oh, she hit her with the back of the hat. She's still not gonna kill this chick? Like, you have had 2 opportunities in the first 30 minutes of this episode, and you just can't do it. Then we leave from there to see that Donna somehow got away from Xavier, gets inside someplace, and while she's in there hiding out, who shows up but Mr. Jingles? And Jingles comes in, and I think she's in the med center. Because he comes in and he starts grabbing things and just starts ripping the bullets out of his body, and him and Donna kind of start talking, and they get to the place as he's kind of doing self-surgery to himself, where Donna's just like, he tells Donna that he hasn't actually killed anybody, that was Margaret the whole time, and he only has 1 kill left, and then, Donna's just like, kill me. The wind is crazy, man. Gotta love doing horror story stuff in the storm. But she basically is like, kill me. And he's like, you know what? No, I'm not going to kill you because you don't deserve to get off that easy, considering that she's one of the reasons that Jingles is who Jingles is. She was playing into everything that Margaret had set up, and she let him out and led him to actually kill people for the first time ever in his life since the war. So he just kind of walks out. It leaves Donna alone. And then we jump back to Margaret, who's just, and then we see that Donna and Brooke Donna comes running. Then we jump back to Brooke, who we think is getting away, and then here comes Montana, who is like Billy Lord as the best crazy face, man. She looked batshit crazy. Comes running out, tackles Brooke, and you're like, okay, so this is still gonna be a fight. And then we jump again to Margaret running into Mr. Jingles, and you're like, oh, we're having a second showdown. And the next thing you know, Jingles gets his hands on her, has her up in the air, he's choking her out, and you're like, oh, he's gonna get her. And she starts reaching for a knife, and you're like, oh, she's gonna get him. And then neither of those things happen as an arrow hits freaking Jingles. And who is it but Xavier, who, by the way, I love that almost every time we see him, like he leaves, we go to commercial, we come back, the burns and the cysts and everything are getting worse and worse on his face. Really, really nice little touch with the Xavier character. But he starts laying in to Mr. Jingles, I guess because he couldn't catch Donna. This is his consolation prize. And he puts 6-7 arrows in this dude. Kills Jingles. Goes down done. And you're like, oh my gosh, Xavier killed Jingles. And while Xavier's shooting, he talks about how he was almost an archer in higigh school, did really, really well and whatnot. But he does. He kills him. And then we get another really funny moment. His dance. He does this excitement dance, and it's absolutely hysterical to watch Cody Fern as this character do that dance, looking like a monster, right? All messed up with all the scarring and the oozing and the burns. So you're seeing him have all this fun, and then he kind of comes up to Margaret and is like, oh man, I'm so glad I saved you. Is everything okay? And she's like, yeah, I am glad to see you, but no, everything's okay. Flips him on the ground, stabs Xavier. I'm like, oh no, not him. And now I'm at this point where it's I'm mourning Xavier because I'm a big fan, but then I'm going, all right, well, if Xavier just went down, I wonder if this is going to be the domino effect for the next 15 minutes. And then your brain starts thinking, you're like, oh man, is this what's going on? Because what I forgot to even mention, I totally forgot, Margaret went off with Chet on a boat earlier and was going to the other side to get stuff to get out and escape. And about halfway through, she kind of stops, and you're just sitting there like, oh man, in the middle of a lake, this is going to end badly for poor old Chet. And she's like, yeah, there's nothing on the other side. I just need to get you alone so I can kill you. She beats the crap out of him with a paddle, doesn't off him though. And he kind of starts to fight back, and she hits him in the wound and kind of knocks him off balance or whatever, and just she goes and starts to cut his ear off, and you're like, oh my gosh, but gets stopped, ends up grabbing the anchor, throwing the anchor off, which then pulls him overboard to drag him down. And as he's hanging on, she just grabs his ear and rips it off, and you're like, oh man, she's so crazy. And now by the time she kills Xavier, you're going, okay, we're gonna kill everybody real fast now. And then after she takes Xavier's ear, she leaves, and then Jingles wakes up, and who's sitting there but the Night Stalker, and he's like, hey, are you ready to, accept Satan as your master? Because if you are, I'm about to save your life, bro. And, you kind of see the smile on Mr. Jingles' face, and you're like, oh man, the serial killers are gonna team up. I wonder if they're gonna go after Margaret together. And then at the same time, you're going, Margaret talked to the hippie before. Does she know that killing all of the kids is gonna bring them all back as has she figured out, is that why she's killing all the kids? And then, we end up going to break, and when we come back, dawn has finally arrived. That last 20 minutes evaporated faster than 20 minutes. And sure enough, school bus full of kids. We see the kids. The kids are actually coming to the camp. And as they're driving up, they're singing like camp songs and stuff. And it's not like high schoolers. It's a mixture of kids, but it's a lot of little, younger kids. And we cut back to the interior of Camp Redwood, and we see Montana and Brooke are fighting. And Montana goes for a shot and misses again, and Brooke gets her over on top of her, gets a hold of the knife, stabs her in the chest, and just keeps on stabbing and stabbing and stabbing, and the bus pulls up, and the kids start screaming and screaming, and Brooke's like, oh no. And even though this episode was lukewarm, there are some highly entertaining moments, and this is one of two of them. And again, it's kind of the speeding up of the process of what's happened to this point. By not killing off more people throughout the other episodes, we end up killing so many people so fast. You get to this point, and you're just like, who's alive and who's dead? But at the same time, the beginning, I thought was really strong, and then the end, I liked. And there's some wonderful comedy that's in here, starting with Brooke's face and seeing all these kids react to what's going on. And then the next thing you know, bunch of cops show up, ambulances, whatnot. Brooke's thrown into handcuffs, and it's at this point I'm like, oh wait, shoot, everybody's dead. Ray's dead, Chet's dead, Montana's now dead, Trevor's dead, Margaret isn't dead, and I don't think Donna's dead. But Margaret's not gonna be dead, and just as you're starting to think about Margaret, you cut around, you see her seeing what's going on, and she's got a knife. She stabs herself in the leg, throws the knife away, and then comes hobbling out, and you're like, oh my god, she's gonna do it again. She's gonna get away with it again. And sure enough, the officers come running over, like, what happened? She's like, she went crazy, like, I got away. I'm like, do you know who that is? She's like, yeah, it's one of my counselors. She went absolutely crazy and killed everybody. And you're like, freaking Margaret kills everybody and gets away with it again, and basically makes Brooke be the patsy. So while Brooke doesn't die, she ends up being the patsy and kind of maybe gets the worst ending for anybody, depending on where you land on what. But her getting pinned for all these murders when she was just self-defending herself and has never killed anybody before, that's as bad as it could get for the innocent virgin. And then we see Ray show up, walking around just dazed and confused, I guess still trying to grasp the fact that he's not alive. And you see him walk by a bunch of cops, and you're like, oh man, maybe only the people at Camp Redwood can see him? Why didn't the cops see him? And then an EMT goes, sir, are you okay? Gets him into the ambulance, and she starts doing tests, and immediately you're like, this is it. Here comes the factual confirmation that he's a ghost. He's not gonna have a pulse. And she's pumping it up to get the blood pressure, and sure enough, nothing's moving. And she's like, we have to get you to the hospital. Throws him in, not wait, you don't have a pulse, just immediately, we're getting you to the hospital. Guess she thinks the equipment's faulty or something like that, but then he gets in, they give him oxygen, and you can see he's breathing, which is interesting for a ghost who has no pulse, but he is breathing, but he's not trying to eat brains, so he's not a zombie. I don't know. It's interesting because Murder House, which it feels like we're starting to set up, I'm pretty sure they don't breathe. And I think they talked about not breathing in Murder House. But to jump back, we also confirm that this is a Murder House situation as the ambulance pulls out of Camp Redwood. who's sitting on the ground but Ray. He cannot leave. And like I said, depending on whose side you fall on, maybe not being able to leave Camp Redwood isn't the best thing in the world. And based on the previews, Ray certainly is in that camp, but it would seem that Montana and Xavier are going to be enjoying themselves. We'll get that in just a second, though. Let's wrap up the end here. And right as, we kind of are figuring out that we're going Murder House style with this season now, which is kind of exciting. Murder House, one of my favorite seasons of all time, and maybe this ghost stuff could be fun, because I hope that the counselors new counselors are going to come. Maybe the kids stay. We'll see. But there could be fun to be had with that story. And just to confirm and kind of talk to everybody who shows up, but Mr. Hippie. And you assume he's going to talk to Ray. But instead, we cut back to a cop who's kind of like closing up shop on his cruiser. And all of a sudden, his cruiser speeds off. And he's like, whoa, wait, hey, stop. What are you doing? Goes to make a radio call and be like, are you, like, basically like, my cruiser just got stolen. And instead, who's he see but Montana? And he stops immediately. He's like, are you okay? Or whatever. And he's like trying to get her name. And Montana goes, no Montana, only Zool. And you're like, what? Did American Horror Story just make the reference? I think it just Ghostbustered like hard. And sure enough, man, that's exactly what's going on. It's the classic callback to Sigourney Weaver when she's being possessed by the ghost in the first Ghostbusters. And Bill Murray is talking to her and is like, Dana. And she goes, there is no Dana, only Zool. And then gets the creepy voice like, there is no Dana, there's only Zool. And for me, probably the best 80s reference to date. Oh, man. Spectacular. Not the first time that they referenced Ghostbusters earlier as well, but I laughed out loud, man. It was so funny. I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, and immediately like, oh, she must be coming around and already liking the idea of being a ghost. But then we cut back to the cruiser and who's driving it but the Night Stalker, and the passenger seat is Mr. Jingles, and they're cruising away, man, smiling, and you're like, oh, this is a team up that I'm excited about. And where are they headed? They're not coming back to Redwood. They're headed to L.A. Makes you wonder, are we going to get to follow those two, maybe wreaking even more havoc in Los Angeles, which could be a lot of fun to play with in the second half as we're trying to figure out where they go. There are two things now on the table that could be fun to play with if handled correctly, and kind of makes you excited. And as I said, next week's episode is diving into the ghost stuff. We see Ray and Xavier and Montana, and like I said, Xavier and Montana totally gravitating towards being dead. Ray still kind of not about it. And you can see that they're going to start killing people. So it does look like maybe either counselors or maybe it's shut down and people are just coming through. Clearly, we're going to follow them. That was all they showed, but I hope we get more Jingles and more Night Stalker. And maybe, just maybe, Ryan Murphy is going to be tying some stuff together. Maybe we find out why Murder House is Murder House, like why you can't leave the property. Maybe that's going to tie into the story that's going on here with them being ghosts, not being able to leave the property. And with Night Stalker and Mr. Jingles, you've got that tie to the Church of Satan, most likely, which is like, oh my gosh, are we going to visit Apocalypse, or maybe are there things that are laying seeds that are tying this into those two seasons? So definitely some interesting stuff going on, and it makes you wonder if maybe we're going to get witches at some point, maybe some Coven action down the back stretch. I don't know, man, but those are my first thoughts and theories after watching this episode, and those are all of my thoughts about episode 5. It was an okay episode, but the more I talked, the more I kind of got excited about the stuff that could be coming. But while I still try to figure out where I'm landing right now as where we head to the season, if this is a good or a bad thing, I want to ride with 84 and trust it, because I've liked a lot of the stuff they've done, and even the approach to the episode rings true to 80s slasher flicks. So maybe it's all on purpose, but I'm going to stop blabbering because I've been doing way too much of that. And I want to know what you're thinking, man. Let me know what you thought about episode 5, Red Dawn of American Horror Story 1984. Were you digging it? Did you find it lukewarm? Are you worried about where we're going? Did the season already start to lose you after last week? Did this not help? What are you thinking? What are you looking forward to, if there is anything? Are you psyched for what could be coming? Did you like that they're all ghosts, that we're getting ties to Murder House? As all these things swirl through my head, if they're swirling through your head, or you're thinking about things that I didn't even talk about, you know what I like you to do, man. This group, my American Horror Story crew, you guys are my favorite, man, the most interactive. So go, hit those comments. Don't let me down. Don't leave me hanging. Hit them comments. Let me know everything you're thinking. As always, if you enjoyed this video and you want more of this Seaman stuff, I love to see them likes. I need you to hit that like button. Give me the thumbs up. Let me know that I'm doing a good job in keeping you guys maybe as entertained or more entertained than the horror story itself. Make sure you do that. And if you want to follow along, you haven't been here for the whole ride, you just joining in on the Seaman's Horror Story reactions and reviews, you want to get in on all of it, go over there, man. Hit that subscribe button. You can find all the American Horror Story videos we've done. And then, if you hit that little bell that follows it, you'll get alerts every time I make a video so you know exactly when I drop my reviews and my reactions from American Horror Story 1984, Episode 6, which is next week. I'm looking forward to it. We're about to see if this season's going to derail itself or maybe get back on track and start feeling the way those first few episodes did. But do those things for me, man. I will be back next week giving you all the good Seaman thoughts on American Horror Story. But until then, I am the Seaman. I'm signing off, man. Peace. Well, I'll be. You guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. Seaman's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the Seaman goodies, join the Cinema Sit-Down Squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.